And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 437. Got a returning guest to the show to talk about some mid-round picks. We did this last year, and people really, really loved it. And I enjoy it because it's a topic of his that he talks about, at FPAS and other times, because this is where the important things happen. We could all talk about the first few rounds, and yeah, is what it is. But to get things going, you need to really get the meat potatoes of the middle of your draft. So without further ado, he is one of the lead analysts, editors, everything at Baseball HQ. He's one of the big editors of the Baseball Forecaster. He's just an all-around great guy. You can find him on Twitter at RyanBHQ. Ryan Bloomfield, how we doing, my friend?
Bubba, doing great. This was, probably my favorite pod to do last year because I'm like obsessed with the middle rounds. I think that's where leagues are won, and I can go off on my diatribe, but I'm looking forward to dissecting each round here in the middle rounds. I think it's really important.
Yeah, people loved this one last year, and I remember when you said something at one point on show or something that like dawned on me. So we did it last year, and I'm like, I hit you up like about a month ago. I said, okay, when do you want to do it again this year? Like, what date works? Because we're gonna do the same thing. It worked out so well, and it's so good. It's a good exercise as we talk roster construction all the time. But before we go into it, plug everything that you guys are doing. You got a lot of stuff going on between the books. You got Florida coming up, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on at HQ right now. Content's going left and right, projections updated daily. So if you're an HQ subscriber, not only do you get the content, but the projections and the tools. Gearing up for first pitch Florida. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go. It is about as far from Oregon as could be possible and stay in the same country. So I can't make the trip this year, but it looks like it's going to be a great time. All the live labor drafts and auctions are going to be there. We'll see about spring training games. That is on the agenda. But then also some really good panels and whatnot. So, and yeah, Bubba, you were out at First Pitch Arizona. Finally got to meet you and take you to the airport this year. So you got a taste of what that's like. But yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at RyanBHQ. Write for Baseball HQ, do a speculator column every Wednesday. Just put one out this week on quantifying pitch mix changes from 2020 versus 21. So it was pretty interesting dive. And then you can also find on Twitter my semi-famous Bloom boards, which I've been slacking a little bit this week, but I try and put out like 3 or 4 a week and put those out for anyone who follows me there.
I was about to say, if you put out just like 2 or 3 a week, I think it's plenty. If people expect one every day, it's crazy because you write your article, which for someone that writes articles, that takes up probably one evening at least, if not more, just to do that. So we can't be doing everything. Plus, you got kids and a wife. Like, you got stuff to do. So it's very, real job. That's what some people forget. A lot of us have real jobs that take up the time too. But Ryan was kind enough to drive me to the airport at FPAS. I got to meet his dad and his brother, who are amazing people well. Had breakfast with them. It's a cool group they got going over at the Bloomfield.
That's right. So. And you still decided to have me back. So yeah, it was funny. I know we were talking like the last morning at breakfast, and you were like, "Yeah, my flight's at 11 or whatever." I was like, "Yeah, we are too. You need a ride?" Like, yeah. Like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Save me an Uber. So it worked out very, very well. But maybe we'll do. We talked about it, and we'll talk probably more going up to it next time. But I think we need to change our schedule and play some golf with all that too. But that's another podcast for another day. But people need to hear about our scheduling. But that'd be a lot of fun as well.
We do need a invitational on Thursday leading up to the welcome happy hour.
And now that it's in November, I can take more time off. So I'm very excited about this. So it will be happening. But as I stated, we're going to do the mid-rounds breakdowns. What I'm using, and I made this list last night, so if the ADP changed a little bit, maybe one more draft that's taking place. I know there's one taking place as we speak. We're doing the 12-team NFBC Online Championships. I picked the 12 teams because more people play actually in 10s and 12-team leagues, so it kind of gives more of a feel for what's going on. So we're going to go through rounds 11 through 20. It's going to be an interesting group of players. We'll kind of talk about maybe some players that stand out for the good, for the bad, people we're interested in, and kind of give you a way to roster build. We have a couple questions at the end that'll kind of cover things as well. So without further ado, round 11, DJ LeMahieu, Dansby Swanson, Shane Baz, Jared Walsh, Camilo Duvall, Willy Adames, Nathan Eovaldi, Rhys Hoskins, Chris Bassett, Kyle Schwarber, Trent Grisham, and Jake Cronenworth. A lot of players that I have lots of shares of in this section. So when you're looking at this round 11, Ryan, what stands out to you besides, the best pitcher in baseball?
Yes, besides the should have been 2021 Cy Young winner in the AL, Nate Eovaldi.
He won the Bloom Board Awards. We know that much.
Yes, he did. He did win that. If anyone, for those of you that do follow me on Twitter, it was kind of nauseating how much every time I would put a Bloom Board out there, which is like, just filters of certain skills and things that I think are important. Eovaldi came up on like every single one: pitch mix, individual pitches, second half surges, all that stuff. So I kind of became the Eovaldi guy. Actually, I still like him in the 11th round of 12s, and I've picked him up a couple spots. But anyone who follows me knows that. So I'm gonna go in the non-Eovaldi division. I'm gonna say Dansby Swansea is someone who I'm really targeting here. I think it was Jeff Erickson the other day put out a tweet, and it's always interesting. This happens every year to a few guys. ADP goes down after like a really good season. Dansby Swanson's ADP in the main event last year was 105, and he went out last year and put like a $20 season together, 250 or 248 average, 27 homers, 9 steals, and his ADP has dropped to like the 120s, which is 11th round in 12 teamers. And I think that's a product of a couple of things, maybe closers being pushed up, pitching again being pushed up, middle tier pitching being pushed up. Anytime someone goes up, someone else has to go down. Shortstop's pretty deep as well, so I think that's why Swanson's fading. But you're really locking in kind of a $20 guy at an 11th round price in the 12th, and a great lineup. Someone who plays every single day is going to rack up plate appearances. Like that one stood out to me on the hitting side in this round, where it's like, yeah, I'm snapping him up wherever. Even if I already have a shortstop and need to throw Swanson at middle infield, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, I love Dansby Swanson. When Jeff sent that tweet out, I gave him like the shush gif. I said, stop talking about him, because I like the fact he's falling so much. I had a lot of shares of him last year. We talked with Toby this past week, did our shortstop preview, and this round's kind of where I want to make sure I leave with, if I don't have a shortstop yet, I want to leave with one. If not, like you said, middle infield, because between Dansby, who I think is amazing, the biggest thing for Dansby is, can they put him at the top of the order? It's like he flourished when Acuna went out, but we've seen season before and everything that if Acuna's there, he's usually hitting like 7th, which kind of, hurts a little bit, obviously, but it'd be simple. If Acuna's not running, hit Acuna 3rd, put Swanson and Albies 1-2, and we'll have some fun. So we'll see. I'm not a manager, but that would be great for fantasy managers out there. But the other shortstop is Willy Adames, who I'm also a big fan of, and he's a guy that I've kind of been pumped up for in recent years because he's so young, and he's one of those guys, if you just look at his metrics, his StatCast metrics, his swinging skills, his contact skills, they just continually improved a little bit each year. Like, he has kept improving. It wasn't one of those like he spiked and then came back down and everything. There's a constant growth that you could see with Willy Adames. Took him out of Tampa Bay and he flourished in Milwaukee. I think at worst you could get something similar to last year. I think there's still more to come. He's only like 25 years old. Like, there's a lot to like about Willy Adames. I don't know if we're ever going to get the speed. Like, Swanson will definitely run a lot more, I think, than Willy Adames, but power-wise, Adames probably has Swanson in that regards. They're very good kind of like a 1A, 1B, if these are your guys towards the end situation. I prefer Swanson. I'm with you because you get that steals upside, but I think Willy Adames in this range also. Both these guys kind of, after big seasons last year, I think, like you said, it's kind of a credit to the shortstop position, which is so deep, but also just like, you got the closer runs and all these other things. And everyone, people are getting smarter. They're being more aggressive towards outfielders and stuff like that, just because you need the roster construction. So those are two guys that I really like in this range. And there's a few others, but I won't mention all of them. But those are two that really stand out. Is Nate your pitcher here? Is there a different pitcher that stands out to you here?
Nate's the pitcher. Actually, really the other pitchers in this, which is kind of interesting. I think the pocket of starters that I like are going a little bit earlier, maybe 8th to 10th round in 12 teamers. Don't really like many of the pitchers in this round. Doval, like, you would know more about the role than I would. But Bassett's someone who I'm not on, who I know a lot of smart people are on, and one of those guys who kind of outpitches his skills, or at least has to this date. But I'm definitely, Eovaldi's the one who stands out, and then taking either Swanson or Adames if I need to go hitter here.
Yeah, Bassett's interesting because I love Bassett, and I've always admitted, like, pitching's, like, if I have to prefer a side, hitting, I'm much better at analyzing than pitching. That's for sure. And I'm learning as I go, but there's experts. There's the Spores, the Pollocks, even Chamber, like all these guys, so I rely on them quite a bit. And when they start pointing out, he gets kind of quote unquote lucky on this pitches because his pitch mix changes, makes me kind of look at things. And then I was talking to you before the show, like Rotolab and any projection system, but when you see dollar values, that stands out. And like, I've been like a Bassett guy, but then I looked at dollar values and where he stands out based on projections. I'm like, oof, that's interesting. So it's kind of made me reevaluate things. That's kind of
the projections do not like Bassett. The big thing with Bassett, and I put this out on a Bloom board a little while ago. He's had homer to fly ball rate is something that typically is out of a pitcher's control. It tends to regress to league average as opposed to someone like keeping their personal baseline homer to fly ball rate. Chris Bassett has had a homer to fly ball rate under 10% each of the last 2 years. Since 2016, only 3% of pitchers have been able to do that, to hold that back-to-back years. So, and then the actual board was of that 3%. What was their homer to fly ball rate the next year? 18%, 16%, 14%, couple 10s, but on average it was just over 12% in that third year. So even if someone does it a couple times in a row, might just mean they got lucky a couple times. But then, like you were saying too, Bubba, like he's a seam shifted weight guy. Like there are deeper looks to take at Bassett, and you can definitely make the case that he could continue to outpitch those skills. I'm more of the kind of the regression guy, and I look at history, and just history's not on Bassett's side, even among that kind of group that outpitches their peripherals. So it'll be really interesting, but I'm definitely kind of one of the low men on Bassett this year.
Yeah, and that's fine because we're always going to be wrong on a few guys because I think you guys are more right than I am on Bassett. It makes sense, all the stuff you guys point to, and you mentioned the different pockets of pitching. They're bigger pockets, it feels like, this year, and they have a lot of question marks. So if there's a little thing that kind of stands out, move to the next guy. Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So that makes sense. One other guy I want to just briefly mention, we don't have to talk a lot about it, but Rhys Hoskins sitting here in round 11 always has my attention. So I'm just going to throw that out there because people like to clown on Rhys, but if you look at what he does perennially, especially like on a per game basis, sure, he gets banged up from time to time, but like last year was kind of a fluky deal, and there's just been some weird injuries. But if he ever gets back to playing like 140 plus, the dude's going to crush the algorithm for first base. So enjoy that value as well.
Absolutely. I like Hoskins at that. If you can't get that kind of top group of first baseman, Hoskins is definitely one you can quote unquote settle on here and be just fine. One of the things we talk about a lot is getting similar type skills and similar type stats later in the draft. And Hoskins, you can make the case, has, Jose Abreu type, Pete Alonso type skills going, Matt Olson type skills going way later. There's a reason he's going later because some of the injury history and whatnot, but great lineup and great skills. Like, yeah, makes sense to me.
All right, round 12 coming up here. Got Kimbrel, Framber Valdez, Austin Meadows, Josh Bell, Brian Hayes, Zach Gallen, Jared Kalenic, Luis Garcia, Ty France, Lance McCullers, Chris Taylor, and Joey Votto. To be honest, not a ton I like in this round, but what stands out to you?
Josh Bell sticks out. And I know I just talked about Hoskins, but I would take Bell over Hoskins, even though he's going around later. Not to cite a Bloom board on every single guy I talk to.
Bring them all. They're awesome. Let them go.
But Bell is he is a rare breed of someone who does not strike out very often, so has a better than average strikeout rate, less than 22%, and hits the crap out of the ball. Barrel rate over 10%. So there's not too many guys. There's only, it looks like, 12 guys going outside the top 100 that has that combination, and Bell is one of them. So I don't know, the lineup in Washington, a little bit suspect, but he'll be right behind Juan Soto. Like, that makes sense. And I like the raw skills. You are kind of hoping that, and this is a thing in the middle rounds, like you do want to start speculating on the ceiling. And we did see what the ceiling was with Josh Bell, and it's pretty damn good. There is a floor there. Like, he has been inconsistent, but he's at least shown he can be a top flight producer in the majors. So I take that kind of that skill that he flashed in the past, along with what he did last year, and that gets me interested.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And he's a popular name. I was honestly surprised he's still going this late. But again, it could be because of different things getting pushed around, like we talked about at shortstop. Because there's a lot of smart people that like Josh Bell this year for what they saw. And another thing that you're kind of hitting on there is people do make fun of the Nats lineup, which is very valid. But at the same time, the fact they won't have to pitch to Soto much, he should have Soto on base and other guys in front of him a lot. So even if he's not hitting 30 home runs, if he's hitting 20 to 25, he should be able to drive in a ton of runs. So
yeah, I think it's more like with Washington's line, and it's interesting comparing that with what we just talked about with Swanson, like the Braves line. I think it's just more like Washington won't be able to turn over their lineup as much, so you might lose like a few plate appearances, which does matter. But in terms of like Bell's spot in the lineup, being behind Soto, it's going to be pretty sweet for RBI.
Yeah, and it's going to be kind of a cop-out here, but the only other guy I like really in this deal, hitter-wise, is Joey Votto. So, like, we're like in the rounds of the first basemen. If you missed on an early guy, or if you want a good corner infielder, like we talked Hoskins, Bell, Votto, I made the comparison that if you look at Votto, since now he's kind of sold out his for striking out a little more, got him the power. If you look at his stats, and the average might be a little lower. I actually broke it down the other day, but I called him the National League Jose Abreu now. There's a lot of similarities. Like Abreu's got the better average ceiling and everything, but there's a lot of similarities in the two. And if you look at projections, there's a lot of similarities in the projections as well. So Abreu's got the better the RBI upside as well, but you're also getting them 50, 60 picks later. So I like Joey Votto as well. A guy I believe in that ballpark is going to continue to flourish, but he's getting older. There's always that risk, but he'd be the other guy for me.
Just took Votto in the I'm currently in a first pitch Arizona speakers draft and just took him 146
beautiful
overall. So yeah, and it's a nice pocket. The other first baseman, I think he's just out of this range, but CJ Cron's another first baseman who I like a lot. So it is kind of a nice, like if you don't snag one of those early first basemen, this is a nice place in the draft to maybe take the guy who drops out of like a Votto, Cron, Hoskins and Bell here. So
yeah, it's if you don't go for the Freeman, the Vlad, one of those early guys, and you get stolen bases or an ace or something, it's a nice pocket to go to. Like some will even say, "Oh, I'll just wait and get like Frank Schmidl or Brandon Belt." Yeah, I'd kind of go corner infield with those guys if you could, but this is a good wheelhouse. Like I know you do different ways of planning your drafts, and you like to build from the back forward and kind of build out your kind of flow chart kind of deal of how you want to see the draft going. I like to do at least go like, okay, I want to have at least one of these like 10 guys or 12 guys. Like I want to make sure before this guy goes, I have a position hit. So I'm not like as like regimented in mind, but at least I have like a list of guys like, let's check these boxes type scenarios. Like for instance, was Adalberto Mondesi on your boxes?
I just took Mondesi for the first time in my life in this first pitch Arizona draft. And it's crazy. I don't tweet that much about Mondesi, but like it's like tweeting about politics or Manfred. It just blows up. People who just applauding me, people who said I don't know what I'm doing. It was
you're all in or all out. That's the crowd.
Exactly. And I've never been on the Mondesi train. This is a little bit to see kind of how I would build around it. It is nice to have that stolen base cushion with Mondesi. At least on paper, right? That's the problem. And that's actually been my biggest thing against him. I know we're kind of going a little bit off, but that's fine. Little bit, if the steals from Mondesi do not pan out, you built that into your roster construction and you're pretty much hosed at stolen bases if and perhaps when he gets hurt. But for me, it was a 5th round pick. So fell far enough to where I know, and I know you're a big Jazz guy, Bubba. Speed just falls off a cliff at that point, especially in the infield. And so actually the decision was Jazz or Mondesi, and could have gone either way. But
I think Mondesi's fine. People like hate this cop out, but I think he's a phenomenal DC pick because you have like 2 or 3, maybe 4 third baseman there. So if when the timing is gone, you have another guy, just maybe you're more aggressive at third base early or something. I don't know. I think he's also decent in like 10 and 12 team leagues because the replacement value is going to be around for you. Like 15 team leagues, like the main event, I would be terrified.
Well, and just the price. I mean, Mondesi's been like a second round guy. I mean, in the second, no way, I'm not doing that. But in the 5th, like I can live with it if it doesn't pan out with a fifth round.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to discuss it on the show here, because like you said, if I said anything on Twitter, it would have just turned into a hailstorm. But like we could have at least the conversation there, like, hey, this is where you could make it work type scenario. Yeah. Where he's really not a bad player, even if he plays like 120 games, he's going to be worth every fifth round pick. So
and then there's the whole concept of taking the time that he missed and baking in replacement value with that. And yeah, smart people on both sides of it. So
yep, most definitely. Any pitchers in round 12 that stand out to you? Like, are you buying into Craig Kimbrell?
He was like my biggest fade on this one. I think he's like you remember Nick Anderson when he was being picked, and I know it was injury related with Anderson of why he busted, but like he was being drafted as a closer when he's not a closer, and that's the deal with Kimbrell right now. If you're taking Kimbrell, you are assuming not only that he's going to get traded, but he's going to get traded to a team that's going to make him a closer. And you're also assuming that second half swoon with Kimbrell will just go away as well. So too many assumptions at this point in the draft, too much risk. So Kimbrell is one I'm out on. One guy who I'm really in on in this round is Zach Gallen. I know he's pretty discounted because of the injury history. But the more I kind of listen to smart folks and analyze pitchers, the more I subscribe to the theory that if someone finished the season healthy, they're healthy. Like they're just as good of a bet to stay healthy the following season than anyone else. And Gallen threw 80 second half innings last season. He's one of 5 pitchers with he's got 3 pitches that have more than 16% swinging strike rate. Brent Strom, who's the pitching coach, former pitching coach of Houston, is now with Arizona and has a lot to work with Gallen in terms of raw ingredients. So I just think that combination of everything at the price in the 12th here is awesome for Zach Gallen. So I'm all over Zach Gallen as opposed to like Lance McCullers, who's going a few picks later, who could not pitch in the playoffs. Like again, it goes back to that. That theory, that concept for me is how did they finish out the season? What was the last that we saw from them? And much more inspired by what we saw from Gallen than McCullers.
No, that's a good point. It's a tough area because Gallen's got the really, really good stuff. The 3 pitches you mentioned. Some people say, well, he could have had surgery. Is he going to be Masahiro Tanaka? Is that what he's going to be? Like there's questions like that. But he threw 80 innings, like you said, with that injury. So that's got to be pretty promising. So I'm with you there. If you're going to pick a guy, he was going much higher last year. He's got that ace upside. So there's legit goods there.
And throwing 80 innings on Arizona, who had had nothing to gain by really throwing Gallen. If there was really any shadow of a doubt that he was pitching hurt, like I would at least hope Arizona would have shut him down because they're just playing out the string at that point. So.
That's a very, very good point. Round 13, we have Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Logan Gilbert, Ian Anderson, Ranger Suarez, Scott Barlow, Corey Knable, Tyler Stevenson, Akil Baddoo, Yohan Moncada, Kyber Ruiz, Gleyber Torres, and Sean Manaea. A little more to enjoy, I think, in this area, or at least a lot of curious names in this area. So what hitters stood out to you?
It's funny. Funny you say that. None of it stood out to me. No, I do not. I do not like this this pocket here. But Baddoo's the most interesting to me. If he can, we tagged an upside of Baddoo. I think it was upside of 25 homers, 25 steals.
Yeah, you guys like him
in the forecaster. Brent Hershey made a pretty good case for Baddoo at PitchCon. So I'm not going against my editor here, but we'll see. It's a Rule 5 background. It's someone who really struggles against lefties. That's the downside with him. The upside is. And this is another theory I subscribe to, is playing good hitters on bad teams who are just going to throw them out there every day and run and not really 100%. Care. And that he's got that in his favor. So Baddoo's probably the one who stands out to me the most. I'm interested to see. Maybe Gurriel's another one who I'd be interested in here, but interested to see who else hitter-wise.
Baddoo's a guy, especially if you feel like you need a little more stolen base upside. There's not a ton as you get deeper in this draft. So he kind of stands out as like I'm in a draft right now and I'm praying he gets back to me in 6 picks. That's how things are going. Like my other stats are great, but I got Vlad Guerrero and stuff. So stolen bases become interesting. So Baddoo stands out in that regard. I love Lourdes Gurriel Jr. I'm a sucker for him every single year. Hits for pretty good average, not like his brother Yuli, but hits for a decent average. He's got 20+ home run upside. He's going to count, the counting stats will be there. Won't steal a ton of bags though, but he's on that great Toronto offense. And if you just look at his metrics, the dude can crush the baseball. So I'm a sucker for Lourdes Gurriel. Is the best way I'll say it. I draft him a ton, and I love his upside. People, they look at Teoscar, they look at Bo, they look at Vladdy. He looks like the player raters from last year. Gurriel wasn't too far behind that group of players. Like, he's very, very good. So he's a guy I don't mind getting this late, especially when you need 5 outfielders. You can kind of throw him out there and enjoy him. But it's like him and Badu mainly for me in this range. I've heard arguments for all these guys, but I'm not in love with a bunch of them.
Gurriel, we did forecaster 30 homers, 300 batting average upside. And in that lineup is massive. And the second half growth that we saw from Gurriel, both plate skill wise and power wise.
You should respect his flow too. That was your COVID flow, what he's got going on there.
I wrote an article on him last year when I had my COVID hair and picked a good picture out for him. Yeah. I can't replicate that, and nor do I want to.
Nor does your wife.
That was a one and done, unless we're in another 2 years.
Well, let's pray it was a one and done, Ryan. Let's just go there. Now, when it comes to the pitching side of this one, though, it's like, you got some young guns. You have Ranger Suarez, who shocked people. You have a couple closers potentially in here. Any of them stand out to you? And then there's Sean Manaea, who I just can't wrap my head around, but people love him. So, anybody here that stands out to you?
Yeah, I'm going to make the case for Manaea.
Okay, cool.
He's one who did stand out to me. I had Manaea on a lot of teams last year. And if you look at the splits, looks like he fell apart last season. First half, second half. At HQ, we've got him at a 3.13 ERA in the first half and a 4.85 in the second half. Like, definitely burned us. Had some really bad starts against, I think 2 bad starts against Cleveland. Cleveland of all teams.
Of all teams, yeah.
It's a money matchup, and just couldn't take advantage. But the underlying metrics, first half, second half, I think we're just fine. Our HQ expected ERA went from 3.85 in the first half down to 3.57 in the second half. The velocity actually went up. So first half he was at 91.8, second half at 92.6, and I keep saying kind of the bad second half with Manaea, but really it was just a bad August. He rebounded really well after he was kind of written off by a lot of folks in that August. In September, he had a 26% strikeout rate, 3% walk rate, and a 3.77 ERA, 1.1 WHIP over 5 starts. Like, he really didn't finish on that bad of a note. It was just a brutal 9.90 ERA in 5 August starts. So for that reason, I think people still have that second half meltdown in mind, but I don't think it was as bad as most think. So Manaea is my pick. He's not a super upside guy at this point, right? It only throws in the lower 90s, but I think he's someone who can give you volume, stay healthy, and he'll be fine.
I think he's one of those guys I just can't watch. And out here on the West Coast, like the A's in the Bay Area here, it's A's of Giants. And when Manaea pitches, he seems like he's soft tossing it up there sometimes. I'm just like, ugh. But stats don't lie. So it's one of those guys you just can't watch make it work. Are you buying into this Corey Knable as the guy in Philadelphia?
No, he's got Knable's got, I think, 3 IL stints and 3 saves in the last 3 years. So same number of IL stints and saves. That's not a stat that you want to that you want to have. I'm just not really sure he's the closer. Like, he might look like the closer on paper just because he was the last one to sign a deal. I'm not so sure Philadelphia is done making moves. So I think
they are a Kimber landing spot.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. They are definitely, or a Jansen, or whatever, or even I don't know if they bring Ian Kennedy back. That was a rough ending to that relationship.
Very rough. A lot of home runs. A lot of home runs in that one. Oh man, but that was tough.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm not taking Knable here, and it's tough too. Like, and this is probably going to be a theme. Like, I don't really like a lot of the relievers in this range, and that's why the closers with jobs are getting pushed up. But it's you're behind the 8 ball if you're taking some of these closers in this range, because either they may seemingly have the job, but they have skill warts, and I don't think they're being able to hold the job. Or it's someone like a Knable or a Kimball who we just talked about, where the market's kind of assuming that they have a job, and I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky. Round 14, Luis Severino, another guy, Blake Trinan, Adelise Garcia, Max Muncy, Clayton Kershaw, Amed Rosario, Eduardo Rodriguez, Luis Urias, Sonny Gray, Eddie Rosario, Brendan Rodgers, Mike Clevenger. I know one of our guys is in here.
I'm going to go. I actually like both the Rosario. I shouldn't say brothers. I guess they're probably not, but both Rosarios. Amed Rosario, first off, is one of my guys this year. I just love the potential. Forecaster, we put an upside of 30 stolen bases on him, but not only just 30 stolen bases, $30 season, which means we don't think he's a one-trick pony. Like, the batting average with Rosario is actually pretty good. He makes good contact. Line drive rate is pretty good. Hit 282 last year, 287 in 2019. He's got a bigger batting average floor than I think most people think. And the big thing with Rosario, like, he's always had the speed. It just never really translated into like great success on the base pass in the majors until last year. He was a perfect 13 for 13 playing in Cleveland. Like, I think him and Straw are just going to run wild near the top of that lineup. And so you're kind of getting like a 3.5 category contributor, maybe 4 categories if you count like homers and ribbies as 2 halves. He's not a 0 in power. So Amed Rosario, I'm going all over the place to get him in this pocket, as well as Eddie, who I think is being discounted because he doesn't have a team. But now that we're pretty sure, or at least I guess now that we know there is going to be an NLDH, I think Rosario is going to be one of those guys who signs pretty quick once we open back up for business. And then his ADP is gonna shoot up.
Yeah, people should love getting Eddie Rosario there. But I'm with you on Amed. I talked about him with Toby as one of my late round targets at shortstop. Yep. I'm a big fan of what he can do, because I think, and Toby, he's smart. He mentioned some things to maybe be slightly concerned about, but I said there's still a lot to like. He's young. He's developing. I think there's more power, like you said, than they're really like he's shown. Not a ton. Like, I'm not stupid, but 15's in range, I think, for Amed Rosario, which would be awesome to go with the steals, like you mentioned. That's where I think it'll come in handy, because, like, similar to Detroit, what does Cleveland have to lose? Like, what, like, between Straw, Amed Rosario, and as long as Jose Ramirez is still there, like, just let these guys go. It's very, very simple. So I'm with you there. What pitchers stand out to you here?
One who stands out that I don't like, and this kind of goes back to my theory on what we last saw from them, is Kershaw. I hate to say it, but like, yeah, he got Carlos Rodon. He didn't get the qualifying offer from his team at the end of the year, which is like $15 million, which is really nothing. And it tells me that LA is really concerned about Kershaw health wise. And again, to go back to that McCullers example, the last we kind of heard or saw from Kershaw was he would not pitch in the playoffs with a forearm issue, structurally fine, but had a PRP injection. Like, even taking him this late is really a risk. And the problem with someone like Kershaw, where there is a floor of like 0 production, is replacement level starting pitching is just so bad. Anyone who tried to stream last year, that I do at least want some floor with some of these pitchers, which is kind of one of the main reasons with Manaea, who I just talked about. So Kershaw's one who I'm kind of avoiding everywhere. Just need to see if he even signs in the spring and what he looks like, but staying away.
One guy here that I'm really surprised by his ADP, to be honest. I was all team Erod last year. I'm all team Erod again this year. I really don't understand why his ADP is right here. I don't. Is it because people are worried about wins with Detroit? Okay. But he's going to get innings. He's going to get tons of strikeouts in that division. And he's got a better ballpark to pitch in. If you like, I know you've looked at it between your Bloom boards, but anybody, and I wrote about it when he first got signed here, you look at any stat, XFIP, FIP, Sierra, whatever you believe in as your go-to, he definitely did not get the fair shake on things, if you want to break it down that way. So he has so many positive on any X stat you want to look at. And it was proof. Like, you watched him, his left on base rate was way different than usual, which was a factor of a bad defense behind him. And Detroit's isn't great, but it's better. It's better than Boston's. So I love Erod at this price point. And also at this price point, he can be a little worse than you'd expect and still be very, very good for you. So I think, honestly, he should be going around 80 Eovaldi, to be truthful. But I might be biased in that regard. But that's the guy I love in this range. If Erod can fall in my lap in round 14, I'll be very happy.
Yep. No, that you made a great case for him. Two great pitches. The changeup is knockout, 16% swinging strike with a huge ground ball rate, and the four seam is 15% swinging strike on the four seam is quite the foundation to build on if you've got that kind of fastball to build around. So yeah, Erod's there, and honestly, like Detroit, I mean they've got some firepower on offense.
They're going to be sneakier than people expect.
Does, but I think they'll be better than They'll be better than what most think. I don't know about the bullpen, but that's not why that's not why we're targeting or fading these guys. It's because of what team they're on. There's so much noise in trying to chase wins. Erod, out of any pitcher in this group, is the one who, yes, I could see being up there with like an Eovaldi by the end of the season.
Yeah, some people, and we don't have to go into, but like Luis Severino's a guy people are into. I'm still kind of like, he pitched, but he didn't pitch much towards the end of the year. So I'm kind of still curious on what the Yankees are going to do there. And then Clevenger, people love him, but that's a tricky one for me as well. Any quick thoughts on those two guys?
No, I agree with what you just said on both of them. Tricky. We just haven't seen Clevenger in so long. One guy who we didn't talk about, who I actually really like, is Lourdes Garcia.
Okay.
Really nice arsenal. 5 pitches that get more than 10% swinging strike, which is Eovaldi-esque, actually. Yeah. And team-wise is really good. So I'm all over Lourdes Garcia here as well.
And I know the forecaster loves him too. Round 15. Yeah, round 15, Alex Verdugo, Nelson Cruz, David Bednar. And talk about relief pitchers inflation. Hunter Renfroe, Gregory Soto, Michael Kopech, Avisail Garcia, Ryan McMahon, Justin Turner, Tanner Houck, Joey Gallo, Mitch Garver. What stands out to you in round 15?
This is like a broken record because I'll say this every year, but Avisail Garcia, Miggy is. I love the price here. I think he's getting discounted for the move to Miami. When I actually think it's like a decent move. I thought Milwaukee jerked around Garcia way too much last year. He was like their best hitter in 2021 and was almost like a platoon guy. Despite that, in only 461 at bats, Garcia hit 29 homers, 8 steals, and hit 262. Like, I'm not sure what more you want out of somebody than what I just listed, and doesn't really have like the platoon splits. At least the last few years, he's been pretty damn even against lefties and righties dating back all the way through 2018. So again, I don't know why Milwaukee platooned him so often. I don't think Miami will. So I actually think, maybe the park isn't as good, but I'd rather take the everyday playing time over a better park and more of a platoon role. So Avisail Garcia, I love at this price.
Yeah, he's a great price here. Like you mentioned, the power, even the speed, the sneaky speed with Avi's nice. Hits for good average. Will play in the middle of that lineup every day. And there's a lot to like. He's going to drive Jazz Chisholm in 100 times, so that's always good. It's a good place to be. So
can't drive him in if Jazz steals home.
That's all. Now you're speaking my language. Avi's a fun one, and at least this year he's kind of getting respect because years past he can like around 20 something. It's come on, guys. But another guy here, and it's kind of ironic. He's going to take Avi's spot, but Hunter Renfroe is interesting to me. Just if he could get the Avi treatment because somehow they still love the Lorenzo Cain. But if Renfroe can play every day like he did in Boston, that was nice. And then the other quick guy I'll mention, because regular listeners of the show know this by now, I am infatuated with Ryan McMahon, and it might be false, but I really like what I'm seeing from him. And for once, there are 0 question marks about playing time. So I'm a big fan of what McMahon can do this year.
Yep. Ron Chandler made a really good case for McMahon at PitchCon when we did our little forecaster upside projection. So, and you're right, like they really can't not play McMahon. I know we kind of say that every year, but there is like nothing behind him depth wise in Colorado. So I like that. Renfroe, I like the skills. I think he's going to get the Avi treatment with Milwaukee, just from what we saw last year. And he does have more kind of pronounced platoon splits. So I'm not as high on Renfroe. But if you're playing like a daily league, or you kind of look at schedules and you can move some guys around, and they've got like a platoon friendly kind of 4-game stretch, you can use them in spots. But in like pure weekly leagues, I think you're just gonna have too many like 4-game weeks with Renfroe.
Are you one of the people that are in the camp of this is an insane value from Michael Kopech? Are you still kind of hesitant on Michael Kopech?
I'd be lying if I told you either way, because I don't think we know. I mean, if I had to lean one way or the other, on my little cheat sheet here, I have capital in my notes. I have capital ROLE question mark. I don't know. So there's a couple things with Kopech, like, yes, what is the role? Obviously, if he's a high leverage reliever, he'll help you in deeper leagues, but in 10s and 12s, you don't want that. He could go to the rotation, then questions on the rotation. Will the stuff hold up? Will the velocity hold up? And then how long will it hold up? So like, there's just a lot of questions. Obviously the prospect pedigree is there. The stuff is there. Like the dude is nasty. If you want to take a shot, if you're in a 10 or 12 and you want to go ceiling, like, yeah, you could argue Kopech has the highest ceiling of any pitcher that we've talked about. The chance of him getting to that ceiling, I'd probably say like 10-15%, but it could hit.
Yeah, no, and that's the hard part because he's so nasty. But I'm with you. I haven't drafted him anywhere because I just can't wrap my head around him actually playing enough to like the role. That's the biggest thing. That's that's the only note you need. Roll. Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Like, we'll see in the spring. And I know not to get lockouty, but just no news on it. So like, it's just so hard to tell. Like, I feel like this ADP for Kopech is a hedge. Like, it's either really going to shoot up with spring training reports, or they're going to announce that he's staying in the bullpen and he's not going to close. They've got Hendricks, so.
Well, that's what's been so hard. Besides just, we have no news, so ADPs aren't changing. There's so many things that aren't changing like they usually do this time of year because we're just kind of speculating, and which is what you do every week. But it's like, is the next Ronald Acuna video? Does that move them up more? Like, that's all we have right now. So it's really tricky to see where things want to go.
I did a board earlier this week on like, and I do it every year, but just ADP movement from December to January, and it was pretty lame, man. It was like. Because the biggest mover was like 10 spots.
Yeah, because usually we have like 3 or 4 guys that like take massive leaps because X, Y, or Z happens, and it's just not happening right now. Any other pitchers in round 15 before we move on to 16?
The other one who I'm interested, actually similar kind of thing to Kopech, is Tanner Houck.
Yeah, 100%.
I think he's got a lot better chance than Kopech of being in the rotation. Like I think Boston will start him. And if they do, you still have the question of what I just said with Kopech is how will the stuff hold up over the long haul? But even Houck was making like 4-inning appearances last year. They build him up a little bit more. He's someone who has a pretty sizable ceiling. And if it doesn't work out, you're in the 15th round and you're not cutting, if you cut him, you're not losing too much. So Houck's another guy who I would look at.
I had him in a lot of 15-team leagues towards the end of last year, a lot, because even those 4-inning rolls were pretty good from him. So I pray.
And even if he stays that way, like he could still virtual some wins if he doesn't start and goes 4 innings, goes the middle of the game, or if they stretch him out to 5, that's all he needs. So.
Yep, agreed. Round 16, you got Seiya Suzuki, who don't have a home yet. Noah Syndergaard, Taylor Rogers, Tarik Skubal, Dylan Carlson, Robbie Grossman, Matt Chapman, Jose Urquidy, Joe Barlow, Colton Wong, Andrew Benintendi, Adley Rushman. Any bats for you in round 16?
Yeah, I'll go Benintendi here. He's kind of a polarizing guy, but did a board on him, and I think the power. It was a similar kind of board to what I talked about with Josh Bell with the with barrels. Benintendi was one of the unluckier when you compare the barrel rate, the raw skill, with the homer to fly ball rate, the actual results. He was one of the few who had a really, really high above average barrel rate, but had a below average homer to fly. And typically those two things are very well correlated. Obviously, hitting the ball hard, hitting it at the right trajectory with a barrel, typically that ends up as a home run. And they just didn't fall that way for Benintendi last year. So I think there's quite a bit of power potential with Benintendi. Kansas City's going to play him every day. We saw that. They don't really care who they're throwing out there, to go back to what we were talking about with Mondesi. The only thing I'm a little worried about with Benintendi is the second half stolen bases. He was 1 for 4 in the second half. So he kind of didn't run anymore and only stole 1 base. So that is one thing. Like, I'm not just going to blindly ignore that. So you're kind of making a leap of faith that the stolen bases are going to come back, but everything else in the profile looks really good to me. I think he could be more of like a 25 homer guy with the good average when he hit just 17 last year, but we'll see on the bags.
He was sneaky good last year. I don't think people realize how good he was. And a lot of it's probably because of the lack of what people speculate power wise, but just he was one of those guys. If you're one that checks out like X stats, barrel rates, just like from like week to week, couple week samples, whatever, he always stood out as a guy that's crushing it or hitting well and just kind of the short end of the stick. So I'm with you on Benintendi. He's kind of sneaky, and he might be one of those guys, he got out of the big spotlight of Boston and now he can kind of chill. So we might actually see that pedigree come to life. And we kind of saw it with Robbie Grossman last year, and part of me, it's like, okay, we saw just ridiculousness last year, such a leap, and it's like, do I have the leap of faith to jump on again? At this price, I'm intrigued. Again, it's similar to the Badu thing. If I want steals, I'm kind of in. I don't expect the power, speed. Like I expect regression out of both, but I also still think it'll be decent enough. Plus, I think it was The Athletic that just came out with an article about, he talked about how he changed his swing and had a new coach and everything, and that's why he was better this last year. We'll see. But in round 16, at least, I'm intrigued by like a Grossman or a Benintendi here for sure.
There are not too many guys, and I know 2020 short season, but we've got Grossman down as a $20 player in each of the last 2 seasons. Yeah. You don't find that
pretty good
very often at this stage in the draft. Like, yes, there are warts. He's older, and like you just said, but guy coming off a 2020 season and is going to play again every day. 557 at bats last year with Detroit. He's going to play.
They gave him a multi-year deal for a reason. So it's not like they could have given him like a 1-year deal, we're going to trade you deal, but they gave him multi-year. So it kind of stood out to me a bit too.
And one of the things you can do too, and one of the things I like to kind of look at is pairs of players. So you could pair a Grossman who, has some of that batting average deficiency with like a Gene Segura or a Brantley, somebody like that. Take that kind of combination of those two players, see what you come out with, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Definitely. And then I'll just 2-second snippet. Colton Wong's always underappreciated in my book.
I've got him too. Yep.
Always underappreciated in my book. Like I fought with Toby on him last year, and Toby's on my side finally. He's sneaky good. So
needs health to break the right way a little bit, but lead off in Milwaukee and he runs there's a lot to
sneaky power too.
Yep, so, and a good part. So, yep.
Any pitchers in this range?
Pitchers fade that I had is Joe Barlow. Just did not like the skills, like a 150 BABIP, 86% left on base. He's not closer material. I have studied Tarik Skubal way more than I should have.
Man. He's a conundrum.
I don't know what to do with him.
No.
I do not know what to do with him. He's someone who has pedigree, who pitched really well last year, kind of in the middle of last year, switched up his pitch picks during the season and threw his worst pitches more often at the end of the year. Like there's just so many variables with Tarik Skubal that I don't know what to do. I could see him taking off. I could see him being another, 4.3 ERA guy. And the more I look at him, the more confused I get. I know that's not what the people came here to see, but I do not have an answer for what to do with Tarik Skubal.
No, he's a guy that if your roster construction, if you're really safe with if you want pocket aces or something, I'm willing to take a kind of chance on Tarik Skubal in that kind of scenario. But if you kind of wait it on pitching and you're kind of going with kind of mid-tier globs or something, it's a little tougher. Because I'm with you. You can see a ceiling. The strikeouts are there. It's just you could also see the blow-ups that we saw when he made that pitch mix change that I always say if we can figure it out from our couch, what are they doing? Like
right.
what are they missing here? But
right.
I don't know.
I don't know what went into that decision, and he could just as easily go back to what worked, and we're all good. But like second half swinging strike rate, it was great in the first. 13% went down to like 10% in the second half. Just
baffling.
I don't know.
Round 17, Hungjin Ryu, Trey Mancini, Patrick Sandoval, Disclafani, Stroman, Soler, Ozuna, Hap, Waino, Rizzo, Sanchez, Joe Ryan. First off, Rizzo's picked 200, which I never thought I'd ever see in a long time. But I get it. But you mentioned when we first started, like there's a group of like pitchers you like before this. I think we're kind of getting to a new group again now. Now it gets a little more interesting of potential starting pitchers for like your maybe fifth, sixth starters, fourth, fifth starters. At least there's like discussions you can start making at this point of the draft, I think. So what stands out to you here in round 17?
Biggest thing that stands out is Strowman Sandoval. Really like, and taking a larger, and you were kind of hinting at this, Bubba, with like where you like your pitchers, taking a larger view. Like this is where I want to really target and round out the end of my rotation with these two guys. Marcus Stroman, we just get the assumption that he's just this ground ball guy and will not give you that very many strikeouts. Had a career high swinging strike rate last year. Going back to my Zach Gallen example of having 3 pitches at a 16% swinging strike, Strowman was another one of those only 6 guys in the majors that has that. So I think there's more strikeout potential than most people realize with Marcus Stroman. The volume's there, the ERA is going to be there. The whip, maybe not. Like that's the double-edged sword of a ground ball rate. You're going to have more of those kind of seeing eye singles, but Strowman's someone who I'm on. I know it's Chicago. Like, yeah, the Cubs are going to be pretty shaky next year. But he's someone I'm on. And then Patrick Sandoval, I know there's some health risks. He had some back issues last season. So you're kind of taking that leap of faith that everything's going to work out there. But in the forecaster, again, right over my shoulder, upside of a 3.20 ERA and 180 Ks. Like the changeup, Sandoval's changeup is one of the best pitches in baseball, if not like a top 5 pitch of any pitcher in baseball. And he threw it actually more than any other pitch last season. So threw it 30% of the time, threw it more than his fastball. So he knows what works. And we saw glimpses of a potential ace with Patrick Sandoval. So all over Sandoval and Stroman here.
Yeah, Sandoval had like that 30 whiff game on his changeup or something like that. Yeah. Nick Pollock made a T-shirt about it. It was so like amazing. Yeah, I'm with you on Sandoval. He's great. I love
and
Stroman.
Came up with the Irish Panda nickname, which is
awesome.
Which is just fantastic. That's peak Pollock.
Yep, peak Pollock. I love Stroman. I'm with you. Like that's a guy I had everywhere last year, and I kept saying, and you nailed it. There's so much more strikeout upside there that people don't give him credit for, and he did it last year. I get it if you look at certain stats, but he was good, and he proved it last year. And the thing that's interesting with Stroman, it's one thing is people hate it when I say it, but there's more than just what's on your laptop. Like you have to, like, if you watch a game or you play the game, or like there's things like he's got a chip on his shoulder, a gigantic chip on his shoulder. And then you can't quantify that sometimes, and maybe it's bad analysis, but there's something like when you watch him out there, he works hard, he bulldogs that. And in doing so, you see him on Twitter all the time talking about pitches and this and that. He's worked on a 4th pitch this offseason. So it's going to be fun.
He retweeted me earlier this year too, so
and that's what he's good at. He's really good. If you give out
he's really interactive. Like he's just aside from the fantasy analysis, he's very open on how he approaches pitching and how he approaches the game. It's a really good follow.
Now, if you say something bad though, he will block you immediately. So heads up on that. I've seen he hasn't blocked me, but I've seen other people that are actually pretty nice people, and they put like a bad stat out there, they gone.
Good to know. I'll keep that in mind.
No bad bloom boards with him, okay?
Yeah.
The only other guy I'll mention real quick here, I'm intrigued, especially because of the price tag on Hungjin Ryu, especially when you hear about what he went through last year. There's a lot to be said about that with his family. I think another year under his belt, plus there's a humidor in Toronto. Forgive me for who tweeted it out, but it was a couple days ago that the Giants ballpark was like roughly like 23rd or something in baseball. Toronto, 26th. So just keep that in mind. That shows just how good the Jays hitters are, but it's a good bump to the pitchers too. So Ryu's a sneaky guy that used to be a lot higher up there, and I think we might see a nice bounce back, especially this price point.
Right. Yep. totally echo that, and I was going to call that out too before we move to the next round. Ryu just came up on board this week for the second highest increase in fastball velocity from the first half to the second half of any pitcher in baseball. And the strikeout minus walk rate went up as well. You mentioned the kind of personal stuff that he was dealing with last year. And Ryu's already throwing. He's already overseas. He's working out with his old KBO team. He means business this year. Like I think he's a great rebound target. Yep.
Yeah. But I love it. He's with his family over there, so he's happy. He's still training. Like everything sounds good to me. So and he gets to bring his family back with him. So that's another plus. So I think there's a lot to like there. Any hitters? This is the pitcher round for me.
This is absolutely the pitcher. This is absolutely the pitcher round. A lot of smart folks like Trey Mancini. So we talked about, and I get it too. We talked about the kind of the first base pocket earlier in the pod. Mancini, someone who you could target here, but outside of that, I'm not too thrilled with the hitters. I think this is where you want to go and fill out that end of that rotation.
Round 18, you got Josh Donaldson, Alex Wood, Eduardo Escobar, Garrett Whitlock, Jake McGee, Dylan Floro, Jordan Montgomery, Gurriel, Lucas Sims, Conforto, Suarez, Alex Kirilloff. Got a handful of closers here, but most importantly, and HQ loves him, I love him, ageist hate him, Josh Donaldson is underpriced in this draft.
Yeah, ADP. Yeah, ADP at this stage is you're betting on health. I mean, that's been the case. Everything else with Donaldson is all good. So kind of hoping he just DHs and mashes and protects himself on the field. So Donaldson's a great buy. Another third baseman that I really like is Eugenio Suarez as a rebound. Again, one of those guys who has shown it in the major league level, right? 34 homers in 2018, 49 homers in 2019. And actually, one of the funnier moments at a First Pitch Arizona panel, I think you were there, Bubba, was when we were at the park and I was moderating an NFBC thing with Rob Silver and Clay and Justin Mason, and everyone kind of was crapping on Eugenio Suarez for just how bad he was last year and how he was an easy drop. We were talking about, that was it. We were talking about like, when do you drop your bad players? Yep. And everyone was talking about how bad he was. And then all of a sudden, like at the end of the session, Toby, he's like, he's pretty quiet, like in a big group. And he just kind of raised his hand at the end and he goes like, well, actually, if you look at Eugenio Suarez's September, he hit 355.
Yeah. Toby's got his phone out, pulling up fan graphs on his phone to let you know why everybody else is wrong.
And everyone was like, oh.
Yeah. That's why I love recording with him, man. He digs into stuff.
Hilarious.
And I'm just like, and he brought him up as a bounce back guy like a week ago. He's with you on Suarez. He went deep on what there is. And one thing I pointed to is they've stopped messing around with the shortstop experiment. Let him go back to play third base. Like come on, people. Like there's familiarity.
As a Luis Castillo stand last year, it was brutal.
It's brutal. So, I don't mind him because, again, there's the point in the draft. Okay, where were you drafting him in the past? Now you're getting him here. Like he could legit hit 40-plus home runs in round 18. Like we would not be shocked. Now, it goes back to your statement about some players earlier. Maybe go and get like a better batting average asset somewhere else in your draft. But there's a lot Suarez could do in that little ballpark. So
absolutely.
For sure. Round 19, Chris. Oh, wait, we got some more pitchers in round 18. Anybody?
Alex Wood for me, not to blow smoke. But Alex Wood is a giant that I like, and you take what we saw last year from the 3.83 ERA, but it's really the combination. Two of the major stats that I look at for pitchers is can they keep it on the ground and can they induce whiffs? Can they miss bats? 13% swing strike for Alex Wood, 51% ground ball rate, and a 3.34 expected ERA at HQ. And pitched 140 innings. Like he's been a pretty fragile guy the last few years, and kind of shush those aside last year. So Alex Wood, someone who I really like. And then you on top of what we saw from last year, you take the San Francisco kind of org philosophy bump, which I do think is a thing. He's someone I would go after here.
Yep, don't mind Wood, and the other guy is Montgomery. I'm willing to keep buying into some Jomo. I like the strikeout upside. We saw that 16.8K to walk, which is not horrible. He's been better in the past, but 16 is not bad. And the ratios were intact. And the biggest thing for me is he threw 157 innings last year. So he's got that upside there in the Bronx with the Yankees. He's not a bad one if you need to fill out your rotation.
And two pitches, one of a select few. I don't have the number in front of me, but two pitches, with a 20% swinging strike rate, the changeup, which he throws 24% of the time, and a curveball, which he also throws about a quarter of the time. The fastball isn't great.
Trouble.
Like that's why he's down here. But if he can just kind of tweak that approach with the fastball, everything else is set up for Montgomery to break out. So I like that call a lot.
All righty, round 19, Christian Vasquez, Gene Segura, the aforementioned, Huascar Ynoa, Tristan McKenzie, Ramon Laureano, Bobby Dahlback, AJ Pollock, Ken Giles, Lou Trevino, Steven Matz, Brandon Crawford, Travis DeArnaud. We're starting to get into some murky water now. There's good options. There's good options.
I like this pocket. So I like Gene Segura. I just mentioned him as someone who just gets like no love, but is going to play every day in a good lineup, hit for batting average. Like I think of him as as kind of a poor man's DJ LeMahieu, who's going. He was like the 11th. He was in the 11th round, so you listed him off at the top of the pod. So Segura is someone I really like. Laureano, I know the suspension, but he's someone who, one of the very few who could give you 5 category goodness starting in May. AJ Pollock is another great one. The skills with Pollock, he has been one of LA's best hitters. Yes. The health is a thing. That's why he's going this late. But AJ Pollock is absolutely a hitter who I love. And then we'll talk about the pitchers maybe next. But those are 3 bats who I really like. One guy who I have no idea what to do with, is Brandon Crawford. I don't know what we do with what we saw last year, but another intriguing shortstop option this late.
I love all those guys you mentioned. Segura's one I've mentioned. It's almost like the cheap Colton Wong type vibe, but he's got multi-position eligibility, plays in a good lineup, hits for really good average for what's like he's a great batting average asset down here with a little power speed still. So I'm with you on Segura. Laureano, I'm with you. I wonder if people are just looking too much at the suspension or kind of the injured season, because like you said, 5 categories at this point in the draft is hard to find. Very hard to find. So if you're only missing a month or something, that's not too shabby. So he's an interesting one to me. And then, I have a lot of Pollock shares already. A lot of AJ Pollock shares. He's another one, like, Donaldson and guys like bake in that IL stint or two. It's just the way things go. But for the 120 to 30 games he hopefully plays, like that's out. If he plays more, you're in the money. But he'll still produce for what you're getting for sure. And
the other thing with Pollock, it's more of like a binary. Like he's either hurt or not. Like he didn't really platoon that much with LA. So like when he's healthy, like you can put him in there and not really worry about it. Which I'd rather have the guy, if you're gonna play like 140 games, I'd rather have the guy who's gonna be out for a month.
True.
And play 6 or 7 times a week than the guy who's playing 4 times a week. So.
No, that's very, very true. Very, very true. Don't have to worry about the platoons and all that good stuff. So I'm with you there. And I don't know what to tell you about Brandon Crawford. I really don't. Okay. I know he made the swing changes. They're legit. Yeah. I don't expect a repeat of last year. I expect him to still be good. He's always been good, but not to that level. That was pretty bonkers. What pitchers do stand out to you here?
The big one that I really like is, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Huascar Ynoa. That was not bad, but
not bad.
I'll just go with Ynoa. I had him in the forecaster. I gave him an sub 350 ERA. He's got everything you need in a pitcher. So again, I'll go back to this. He missed a ton of bats last year. He racked up strikeouts. He kept the ball on the ground. And he did all that with improved control. And there's another kind of thing here, and I believe it was Rob Silver who mentioned this previously, but he's got a changeup that is really good and just didn't use it that much last season. So I think if with a pitch mix change, Inoa is someone who I'm going to be all over at this point in the draft.
If he did not punch a wall last year, he'd be going a lot higher in this draft. So I'm with you there because we didn't see him in the postseason. We didn't see him for like a couple months to end the season. But when he was pitching, he was one of the most expensive fab acquisitions at one point in time. He was awesome. So he's very, very good. I agree with you there. He could be one of those guys who's kind of sinking because of what we didn't see to end last season more than anything. Round 20, the final countdown here. Jonathan Schoop, O'Neal Cruz, who hasn't really done much, but here we are. John Means, Harrison Bader, Alex Cobb, Enrique Hernandez, Brandon Belt, Lane Thomas, Trevor Bauer, Joe Adell, Nicky Lopez, John Gray. There are some interesting ones here. If you want to mention another Giants pitcher, you're more than welcome to.
I will not mention Cobb, but I do like him actually. I'll give you the floor with Mr. Cobb.
There's smarter people that love him, and I'll echo basically what they all say. It makes sense.
One guy that sticks out, and this is not something I really ever do, is take someone who has like never played in the majors, and that's O'Neal Cruz. Yep. And I'm kind of just leaning on the projections here, but the projections just love O'Neal Cruz. So in my little sheet here, I aggregate 4 different projection systems: HQs, Razzballs, BATX, and ATC. And over 600 plate appearances, O'Neal Cruz is a 2020 player, and they're projecting a 260 batting average. Like, you're not going to find that this late in the draft. So he is someone who, again, I wouldn't normally do this, but Cruz is going late enough to where, like, yeah, I would absolutely take a shot and go with him. So he'd be my hitter. There's not really like, it's funny. A lot of it's league format dependent too. Like, since we're gearing this more towards 10 and 12 teamers, like Jonathan Schoop is someone who I would absolutely not take in that type of format. But in a deep league, an AL only league, I had Schoop last year in Tout Wars AL, where there's just no replacement level. Someone who like him who plays every day is really important. But in a 10 and 12 with the limited upside, Schoop isn't someone I'm looking at. So I think it's a pretty rough group for hitters, but Cruz would be the one who I would go with.
I don't mind the Cruz call. I have like Mason and company have sold me on him many times. I hate drafting prospects. I'm so bad. It burns me more than it doesn't. But I agree with the projections. I'm going to go to bat for Jonathan Schoop for you. He wasn't the guy I was going to talk about, but I'm going to try to talk to you on this one. If you take out the short in 2020, he has 5 straight seasons of at least 21 home runs, which is pretty darn consistent. If you're looking for late power, he's hit basically 256 or higher in all but one season since 2015. So he's going to get you a decent average, good pop, 60 to 70 runs, 60 to 70 RBIs for free. And he's got multi-position eligibility, first base, second base. So I like him quite a bit, actually. The
big piece to that is the second base part of it, too. Yeah, that's pretty huge. And then you can obviously do corner and middle with that. So, yeah, I mean, 623, you mentioned the home runs, 22 home runs over 623 at-bats. Like, isn't that great? But it is 22 home runs.
Yeah, that's all I care about in the end.
It is 22 home runs.
Because he's still going to play every
RBI.
Yep.
So.
But the other two I'll give quick hits to. Enrique Hernandez, I just keep buying into him because Boston keeps hitting him towards the top of the order, and he's going to get you close to 20 or over 20 homers and could score a ton of runs in that offense. So, and he's got the multi-position eligibility as well. So he intrigues me. And then one guy I keep buying back into, and we're going to see if it burns me or not. I'm not taking him in every draft, but I have him in a lot of drafts. And I am buying, like you bought projections. This guy's got projections too, but I'm taking prospect pedigree and Joe Adell. I'm still looking at, like, everyone loves
someone else.
No, everybody loves Jared Kalenic, not Brandon Belt. No, everybody loves Jared Kalenic, and it's like, okay, he's great, but Joe Adell was in that conversation last year too. Like, he was right there, and we're kind of forgetting about him because he was hurt, didn't produce great in the pros, but he's always hitting the minors. He's hit for decent power. Projections all have him for like 20 plus home runs. The average is a little bit of a concern, but if you put him in there with Trout and company, Ohtani and Rendon maybe, and Walsh, it's a good offense. So at this point in the draft, I'm willing to buy in as one of my last outfielders or whatnot. It could backfire, and the beauty is where you're paying for him now. If you got to drop him, you can drop him. It's not the end of the world. So he's a guy I think that could this time next year could be a whole different conversation. Similar, like I think Kalinic's the same kind of deal, but Joe Adell's a guy I'm buying into quite a bit.
He is one of those nice kind of binary decisions. You're either going to cut him or you're really going to like what you got. And in the 20th round, you can live with that. Yeah. How many consensus top 5 overall prospects that are just 23 years old are going this late in drafts in the recent history? I don't know, but not many. It would be my guess.
I'm gonna try to believe that all the prospect people out there knew something, and he's still developing. Let's just go with that for now. But that's what we're gonna hope for.
The guy who I thought you were gonna say, because you were talking about I'm gonna keep buying back in, and this was Jon Gray. I can't quit. I can't quit. The man had a velocity increase last year, has the secondary pitches to get it done. No longer in Coors. I know he kind of had the reverse split kind of thing going on, but I'm just a sucker for him, but I'm back in on Jon Gray. Texas is a pretty good park to pitch in these days, and much better than Coors. So
I thought you were going to mention him the first time. That's why I didn't think you were onto him all of a sudden. But Jon Gray, another one of the guys when you're going through ADP that when he was signed, I would expect it to have gone a lot higher in drafts.
Yep, agreed.
The hype for him, and then every time you're drafted, and it's like, wow, he's still on the board. Interesting. Did not expect to see him sitting here, but because I'm with you. And Texas, besides the ballpark, which is sneaky good for pitchers, Jon Gray is very good. Like you said, I wouldn't worry about the splits as much as people are. Maybe I'm naive to that, but they have a way of working with pitchers. We saw Jordan Lyles. We've seen Kyle Gibson. These aren't elite pitchers, but in round 20, so you're talking almost pick 240 right now. They can make a 240 pitcher, like an ADP of 240, turn into a fantasy relevant pitcher for you. Mm-hmm. So that's where you got to kind of think of things. Is he going to be an ace for your team? Probably not. Could. You never know. He's got good stuff, but he could end up being your 3 or 4, and you're going to get him as your 6 or 7. So that's pretty good to me. Yep. It's the whole perceived value of drafting. Before we go into some listener questions, do you have any other thoughts on just the mid rounds, how things have been going in drafts for you right now? We got some questions on potential targets and stuff, but anything that's been standing out to you so far this draft season?
Just the one thing I'll say, just to kind of put a bow on it, is it's funny. So you look back, this is really where I think you need to invest most of your draft resources, and not only don't just do it. And we've hinted at this a couple times throughout the pod, when we're talking about specific players, don't just, yes, go through and highlight, listen to pods, do your own research, read articles and that sort of thing, and identify the guys you like in these rounds. But on top of that, when you're done with that, take that higher level look. Which positions and which stats are you highlighting the most in this group? And you should be building your first few round strategy off of that. So just an example, we talked about the first base pocket at the beginning of the pod. If you really like some of those Crohn's, Vottos, and that sort of thing, maybe go away from your Alonso, your Olsen, and target someone at a different. We haven't really talked about many third baseman at all in this, in these rounds. So maybe target a third baseman who you might, maybe tied with an Olsen or an Alonso earlier in the draft, but because you can get a first baseman you like later on. Take the third baseman early on. It's that that's an example of just building from the middle and having that dictate your draft strategy up front is, I think, hopefully the big takeaway, even more so than just the names of guys who we like or don't like. I think if you do that and you can build a draft plan based on the types of guys that you like in this pocket, that's the way to put that puzzle together and make it all flow. So
that's great advice. That's exactly why we kind of talk about this. That's why you and I and others do a bunch of NFBC 50s or DC 150s, or so just so you get the idea of the player pool and where things fall, because you get kind of comfort zone might not be the right word, but you kind of feel comfortable on where you can take certain situations, like positions, stats, all that kind of stuff. Like we talked about, you like pitchers a little earlier and like pitchers a little before round 11, but then we like some around 16, 17. So that lets you can kind of that means before round like 8 and 9, you need to go grab that third baseman or something. Get your pitchers here. Come get your first baseman. Just kind of like map your draft out. Kind of like nothing's perfect because there's a lot of smart people out there that are going to take your players. That's how things go. But it gives you an idea of where you're going and where you need to get to. I kind of hinted at it. I didn't want to like resource it every time, but it's just because it's the new toy in my head between Roto Lab. But you can do it with anything. Like Toby uses his model on Tanner Bell's. Whatever, and Ryan already mentioned his conglomerate of 4 projection sites. Get the dollar values, and I think it's very interesting to see. Rotolab just does it nice and neatly for me, but you can do it anywhere, and it has all the positions and the dollars right there, and it'll highlight how many good players are each position and how many aren't. So you can really, and it keeps you in line with like, okay, now I need to kind of focus my attention somewhere else, even though ADP might not say it. I need to make sure I leave with one of these kind of guys type thing. So. A lot of things as simple as highlighting a name and doing that, and that you need to game plan and kind of go that route. So there's a lot of interesting ways to go about it. And the one thing I also will say is didn't talk about a lot of stolen base guys here. So that's why stolen base goes so early on. Early on.
And didn't talk a lot, really, any closers that we like.
No.
And that's why they're, I mean, it, like you said, this is a smart industry. Like guys are getting pushed up for the right reasons.
Like people are clowning on early saves, but if you're sitting in a draft, you'll wonder why. You'll understand real quick why they are.
I was one of those, and then I did my first draft, and I was like, "Ooh, I have Dylan Floro and Gregory Soto."
And see, like in a redraft format, I'm not as worried about that because the saves always become around. It's a pain in the butt to fab for them. That's a problem. But you can make do there. It's those DCs and stuff that's just like, oh no, this is not good. So 100%
it really does get ugly quickly. So yeah, that's I think what we just talked about is this last 5 minutes is probably, I think, the biggest takeaway of the pod. So
we save it till the end, so you have to suffer through the whole thing and then get to that. Will Garofalo's got a couple questions for us here. As you get into those 11 through 20 rounds, how do you balance the decision between filling team needs versus getting your targets? You just kind of hit on that, sort of. Do you take player A that you like less than player B because he fills a need?
Yeah. So I did kind of hit on, and the answer that doesn't exactly answer the question is what we just talked about, is try to put yourself in a position where you don't need to do that. But if you're in this spot, I think, and kind of the easy cop-out answer is league dependent. I think if you're in like a draft and hold where you cannot make in-season moves, I really do think you need to focus on your team and target and patch holes as best you can in the middle rounds. But if you are in a league that allows for trading, that has fab pickups, especially trading, just go for the values and go for the guys who you like and trade out of it later or fab out of it later. So I think it kind of depends on what league you're talking about and how I would do it. But yeah, like right now I'm such in draft and hold mode that I am trying to kind of keep as balanced as possible in the middle rounds. Easier said than done, but league dependence my answer on that one.
No, and it is definitely two different approaches, the redraft and the draft and holds. I was doing tons of draft and holds. I'm trying to do a couple like cheaper redrafts right now because I want to start doing OCs here in a couple weeks. I'm trying to like train my brain to think differently, and because it is different, like you said. The one thing I'd suggest to Will or anybody else, if you can find the cheap league, because you can do mocks if you want, but people give up halfway through and it kind of ruins the strategy. Do a draft that makes you feel uncomfortable by going for team needs over who you like, and then see how the build looks and see if that makes sense in the end. Because if you do the team needs thing, there will be moments in your draft where you take picks where it's like, this sucks. But when you make the whole thing come together, it's interesting. That's what I'm trying to do right now, is to see how it kind of fluctuates, how things go. So that'd be my one suggestion, is try that if you can. And then you'll kind of have a better feel for what you need to do or what you like to do or what your strengths are. So check that out. The other question he has, favorite players in rounds 11 through 20 to jump to a top 10 come March. Do you have anybody that stands out that'll be a top 10 round pick? Obviously, someone in round 11 would be an easy call, but Nate Eovaldi probably stands out to you. Anybody else?
Top 10 come March.
I'm assuming top 10 rounds come March. So
yeah. It's got to be one of the guys. I would go and I kind of mentioned this earlier, I would go Kopech or Hauk.
That's a good one.
It's someone who, it's got to be someone who like or any of the closers we just talked about. It's got to be someone who we're just waiting on news for. And when that news hits, they're going to go way up or way down. So it's going to be like if LA does not make a move and Blake Trinan is the guy, like that dude is a 5th round pick. And so probably the closers, but then also the 2 starters or potential starters that we just aren't sure on the role. Other than that, I don't see like, I mean, we can talk about how much we love Amed Rosario so much. I don't think we move markets like that. Like I think the ADP is settled enough to where guys where you're not really waiting on injury news or role news, I don't think you're going to really move that much.
The only other guy I think could possibly take a jump if like we start getting different reports, Seiya Suzuki, we see where he signs. Because some people, like not a big international guy, but like Tim McLeod's of the world and some other guys that are good at that, he's like a massive offensive talent. So some people will believe in that. And if he goes, say he does go to Boston, like the rumors say, or he goes to a certain place, that could jump him. He might get close. That I think most of it's people are kind of worried right now. So he could be a guy too. Yep. Well, biggest fade, there's a lot of those. So if you listen back to the show, there's a lot of fades we have for you there. So do you have like one big one that stands out? Because there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, I mean, we hit on a bunch of them.
Yeah,
my biggest fade of any. Who did I crap on the most? I don't know. I'll go Knable. I just don't think he's going to close in Philly. So I think you're just wasting a 13th round pick, Knable or Kimbrel.
That's fair. The Kimbrel one's one I kind of live with as well. Say you need speed, your favorite options in these rounds, or do you really try not to have a huge speed need? We kind of said get speed early. But I think Ramon Laureano kind of stood out as a dude.
Get speed early, but yeah, I think there's enough guys, and the problem is like you have to get them all, and like you were saying, Bubba, like you can target 4 different guys in 4 different rounds and not get any of them. But Laureano, someone who we talked about, Amed Rosario, I'd absolutely build around to try and patch together some steals. We talked about Benintendi, again, kind of slowed down in the second half, but has the age and the pedigree to rebound a little bit there. But yeah, it's brutal if you're behind in speed, like, and this is another thing, and league specific, but if you're in a standalone league, and I wouldn't go into a draft punting steals, but if you don't have the speed you need after 5 or 6 rounds, just lean into it and punt it. Otherwise you're just trying to reach for guys that, and you get too many of them, they're just deficient in other categories, and you end up doing more harm than good.
Yeah, I had Zach Waxman on, and he talked about someone asked if you wanted to play like even in a DC, but in a redraft, it's probably even better, and you just wanted to punt a position just to win your league. You didn't care about the overall. Just wanted to win your league. He did the comparison on what you need to score in the other, instead of going from like the 75 to 80%, if you want to be like 85 to 90%, you'd be surprised how little the jumps are in certain categories. So if you focus somewhere else and said, screw it, I'm not. So I'm kind of, if I'm not wanting to take saves early in a standalone league, I don't think forcing your hand in saves throughout like the mid rounds is a concern of mine. Let's put it that way. Makes it interesting.
It's funny. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I've got labor mixed coming up in I think it's the 22nd of February, which is a standalone league and which is a trading league. And I don't need to get a closer. I don't need to get, like, I could build a pretty good hitting core of non-stolen base guys and just target 4 category hitters. I can't do both, I don't think.
You got to pick one or the other.
And you got to pick one or the other. But it's ideas like that are starting. I'm trying to, just like you said, trying to shift a little bit from that draft and hold mindset to standalone and trading leagues, and it's a different game. It's a different game.
Yeah. The standalone league I'm in right now, we've gone through 12 rounds. I have 3 starting pitchers, 9 hitters, 0 closers, and my offense is projected to be very, very good. So
I would imagine so.
We'll see how that works. That's just I'm just trying to. I'm playing with strategies here, so we'll see how it works. But we'll wrap it up there, my friend. Before we take off, go ahead and once again mention all the HQ goodies and whatnot.
Yeah, Baseball HQ, First Pitch Florida. If you're down in the Southeast and want to hit it up, March 4th through 7th in St. Pete. Find me on Twitter at RyanBHQ. Look up my Bloom boards. I will put one up on Friday just because I have been slacking this week, only 2. So I'll keep those going. I've got enough in the hopper, I think, to get us through at least mid-March. So so we'll yeah, the repository is full. I got a lot of ideas. So follow me there. And yeah, Bubba, really appreciate you having me on. This was a blast, man.
Yeah, always appreciate having you on. Always appreciate the HQ guys and the content. I talked about them recently. I really appreciate what you guys do over there. It's good stuff, and it hits on even the easy stuff for dumb brains like mine. So I really enjoy the content that's over there. One last question just snuck in. James Treviglio asks, who do you think closes in Philly over Knable? Well, if you listen back, I'll answer this for him, so you don't have to worry about it. We think they might bring someone else in still.
My guess today is the leader in saves in Philly is not currently on the team. Jose Alvarado's there. He is one who is in the bullpen right now, who is a legitimate threat to Knable. And again, I think just the market is assuming because he signed the contract that he is the closer, and we don't know that. So it could easily be Alvarado. Could be a mix. Could be someone who is not even on the team. So.
Perfect.
So hard to tell right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. No news. Spring training helping. Please, quick. Saturday, be good. All right. We will wrap it up right there, Mr. Bloomfield. I appreciate you. Everybody, again, check him out on Twitter at RyanBHQ, and we'll catch you guys next time.